quiet night air rests above you, not silent but settled enough to feel still. You stand without moving and the sky opens overhead. Points of light scatter across the darkness, some steady, some faintly restless. A few of those lights seem to waver as if they cannot quite hold their place. Others remain calm, fixed, almost patient. The difference is subtle, but once noticed, it does not disappear. This is not a rare sky. It is not a special night or a moment that only happens once. This is how the sky often looks when there is time to stand and notice. Most evenings pass without this pause. The lights are there, but attention moves on. Only when you stay long enough does the pattern begin to show itself. Some points of light shimmer softly, never quite settling. Others shine with a quiet confidence unchanged from one moment to the next. They share the same darkness, yet they behave differently. It feels strange that such distant lights would appear unsteady. These sources have existed for immense spans of time. They are not fragile things easily disturbed. The motion you sense is small, almost hesitant. It does not look like movement through space. It feels more like a trembling something closer, something subtle. The sky itself does not announce this difference. There are no labels, no boundaries drawn between one light and the next. Only patience reveals that not all points of light behave the same way. You may have seen this countless times without naming it. The mind often smooths over small irregularities. Stillness is assumed unless something insists otherwise. Here the insistence is gentle, a slight flicker, a tiny change in brightness. Enough to register, not enough to demand attention. The calm lights do not compete. They do not pulse or shimmer. They simply remain steady against the dark. The restless ones seem less certain. Their brightness shifts, their position feels unstable. They never leave their place, yet they never fully settle. This contrast does not depend on where you look. It appears across the sky, scattered without obvious order. Restlessness and calm exist side by side. Nothing about the night explains this difference at first glance. The air feels quiet, the ground unmoving. There is no sense of disturbance where you stand, and yet something is happening. Not far away, not at the distant source of the light. Something closer, nearer than it seems. For now it is enough to notice the difference. No reason needs to be assigned yet. Recognition comes before explanation. You stand beneath a sky that looks familiar, but familiarity shifts when attention deepens. The same stars, the same darkness now feel slightly altered. The night does not change, your noticing does. As your eyes move slowly across the sky, the pattern repeats. A shimmering point here, a calm one nearby. The contrast becomes easier to see once expected. Some lights appear to dance, though the dance is restrained. Others seem anchored, unaffected by whatever touches their neighbours. They hold their brightness without hesitation. There is no sharp line dividing these behaviours. No region of the sky belongs entirely to one group. The difference feels local, individual, specific. One bright point stands out by its steadiness. It shines clearly without flicker even when nearby lights waver. Its presence feels almost grounding. This light has been noticed before, even named before. Jupiter often appears like this, calm and unwavering. It does not join the subtle shimmer around it. There is nothing dramatic about this calmness. It does not flare or demand attention. It simply stays as it is. The steadiness of Jupiter is not rare among such objects. Others share this quiet behaviour. But Jupiter is easy to recognize because of its brightness. Nearby, smaller points refuse to settle. They brighten and dim in tiny irregular ways. The contrast with Jupiter makes their motion clearer. At first, it might feel tempting to think of this as a difference in distance or age. Some lights older, some younger. Some stable, some less so. But the night sky does not present itself as a flat image. It is not a painted surface with identical points applied to it. Depth is present even if it is not immediately seen. Different lights reach you in different ways. They do not all travel the same path to arrive at your eyes. Their journeys are not identical. For now, this remains an observation, not an explanation. The sky appears layered, not uniform. What you see is shaped by more than the source alone. The calm lights seem to arrive whole. The restless ones arrive altered, subtly reshaped along the way. Something between you and them matters. Standing beneath the sky makes this easier to feel. The space above you is not empty. It is filled with something present even when invisible. Above your head, the air feels quiet, but it is not rigid. It does not form a solid shell. It exists as a living layer, thin yet active. You do not need to think about this yet. The sensation comes first, not the reasoning. The air is there and the light passes through it. The night sky rewards slow watching. Quick glances blur differences together. Time allows separation to emerge. As minutes pass, patterns become familiar. You begin to expect which lights will shimmer. You notice which ones will not. The calm points offer a kind of reference. They feel reliable, unchanged from moment to moment. They anchor the scene without effort. The restless points never fully repeat themselves. Their motion is irregular, always slightly different. They resist being predicted. Nothing about this feels urgent. There is no message hidden in the flicker. It is simply a behavior quietly present. The night does not ask you to solve it. It allows you to observe without pressure. Understanding can wait. When clouds are absent and the air feels clear, the effect remains. Even on calm nights, the difference persists. Stillness on the ground does not remove it. This suggests that what you are seeing is not a momentary disturbance. It is a regular feature of looking up from here, a characteristic of the view from this place. The sky looks the same everywhere on Earth, and yet not quite. Different nights bring subtle changes, but the general pattern holds. Some lights shimmer, some do not. This remains true night after night. Jupiter continues to shine steadily when it is present. It does not join the flickering. Its calm becomes a quiet reference point. Other bright objects behave similarly. They hold their light without trembling. They appear settled even among restless neighbours. At this stage, names are not important. Categories can wait. What matters is the repeated experience. The sky invites comparison without instruction. It allows the eye to sort and separate. Observation becomes its own guide. You may notice that the restless lights feel sharper at times. Their flicker can make them seem more alive. The calm lights feel softer by comparison. Neither behavior suggests intention. Neither implies change at the source. They simply appear as they do. The difference does not belong to the darkness. It does not belong to the night itself. It belongs to the way light arrives. Between you and every point of light lies the same space, the same air layered and uneven, the same environment through which all light must pass. For now, this idea remains gently in the background. It does not need to be fully formed. Awareness is enough. The sky is not a static picture. It is a scene shaped by distance, motion, and presence. What you see is always part of where you stand. Standing under the night sky means standing inside the experience. You are not separate from it. You are part of the path the light takes. The calm points and the restless ones share the same destination. They reach your eyes together. But they do not arrive in the same way. This realization does not close anything. It opens a space for noticing, a space where the familiar sky becomes slightly less obvious. You remain still, the air above you quietly active. The lights continue their subtle behaviors. Nothing rushes toward a conclusion. The night holds its shape. It allows the differences to exist without explanation. For now, seeing them is enough. Sometimes a single bright star will pull your attention for no clear reason. You hold your gaze there and the shimmer becomes easier to feel. It is not loud, it is just persistent. A faint star nearby can behave differently. It may blink in and out of prominence while the brighter one only trembles. The night offers these comparisons without asking you to decide anything. You may notice that your own stillness changes what you notice. When you stop scanning, the delicate motion becomes more visible. The sky rewards a quieter kind of looking. Jupiter can feel like a steady peg in the scene. When your eyes return to it, everything around it seems easier to judge. The calmness becomes a reference, not a lesson. Even when you do not name the objects, you can sense the difference in how they arrive. Some points feel like needles of light, some feel like small beads soft at the edges. The longer you stand, the less the sky resembles a single layer. Near and far begin to feel different even if the distances remain invisible. The night sky is not a flat image, and your attention starts to treat it that way. The difference you noticed can remain without explanation for a while, but the longer you watch, the more it begins to feel like something nearby is shaping the view. The next step is to notice where the unsteadiness actually appears. The answer is not far from you, and it does not require the sky to change. It begins in the air overhead and in the way different lights arrive. Stay with the scene for a few more moments. A shimmer appears, fades, and appears again, and the sky remains patient. The effect feels like a change in the view, not a change in the source. If you take a step or turn slightly, the impression can shift. You're still under the same sky, and yet the path to each point is slightly different. The next part of the journey is to notice where that shifting can happen. Look from one side of the sky to the other slowly. The behavior does not cluster neatly. A calm point can sit beside a restless point, and the night remains indifferent. If you watch a single shimmering star, it can feel as if the motion is trying to settle but never does. The light seems to hesitate. Then it returns to the same tiny trembling again. You can keep the feeling simple. A far light is arriving, and something nearer is shaping how it arrives. The star remains distant, the shaping feels close. This is why the next step can still feel like watching rather than learning. You do not need new words, you need a clearer sense of location. Where is the motion really coming from, and where is it not? You are standing in the final part of every light path. The last part of the journey happens above you. That is where the sky becomes a scene you are inside, not an image you observe from a distance. You might notice that the shimmer seems to belong to the space above you more than to the stars. The feeling can be subtle at first, then it becomes hard to ignore. This is the moment when the sky stops feeling like a distant ceiling. It begins to feel like depth with a nearer layer. The next part of the journey stays close to that nearer layer. If you keep your body still, the sky can feel more stable, and the shimmer becomes easier to separate from your own motion. The calm points do not change, and the sparkling points keep sparkling. The difference stays in place even as the details wander. This is enough to move forward. The next section stays with the same sky. It simply shifts attention toward the final stretch of the light path above you. Look up, then look down, then look up again. The ground feels solid, and the sky feels distant, and yet the connection is immediate. The air above you belongs to the ground, and the light must pass through it. This is why the same sky can feel different from one place to another. A street, a field, a shoreline. Each shapes the air overhead in small ways. The stars do not change, but the last part of their path does. If you accept that the next section becomes simple, you're not chasing the stars, you're locating the source of the unsteadiness in the view. You can take this as a quiet correction of intuition. The shimmer is not a message from the star. It is a hint that the last part of the journey is happening close to home. The next section keeps that hint and makes it clearer. It stays with the same sky. It only changes what you notice. The restless motion is not coming from the star itself. The source is not shaking, and the light does not leave the star already broken into flicker. The unsteadiness appears later closer to you, along the last stretch of the journey. A star can burn with steady output for ages and still look as if it is trembling from here. That contrast is the first clue. What you're noticing is not the star changing, but the view changing. The final part of the path matters because it is where the path becomes yours. Light can cross deep space without meeting much, then enter the unsteady air above your head. The scene becomes local in a quiet way. The air overhead feels calm, but it is not locked in place. It is layered, it shifts, it mixes, it drifts. Even on a night that feels still, the air is never perfectly uniform. You can picture those layers without naming them. Some are slightly warmer, some slightly cooler. Some are a little denser, some a little thinner. The differences are small, but light is sensitive to small differences. As it passes through uneven air, its direction can be nudged. Not by a dramatic amount, just by a tiny angle again and again. It helps to imagine the air above you as something with texture. Not a wall, not a perfect emptiness, but a gentle medium with soft gradients. The restless layer overhead becomes part of what you're seeing. Each small patch of air can bend the path a little. Then the next patch bends it a little differently. The changes are slight, but they can add up into a visible effect. From your point of view, that accumulation can look like motion, not a star sliding across the sky, but a point that cannot settle. A shimmer that comes and goes as the path keeps shifting. The brightness changes for a similar reason. If the path shifts slightly, the way the light concentrates at your eye shifts too. A little more, a little less, and it feels like the star is pulsing. None of this requires the star to be unstable. The star can be steady and the air can still make the arrival feel unsteady. The motion belongs to the space above you, not to the distant source. This is why the effect can feel intimate. It is happening in the same region where heat rises from roofs, where cool air settles into low places where the night breathes over the ground. The sky looks distant, but part of the story is right above your head. You do not need a storm for this to happen. You do not need dramatic weather or strong wind. The uneven air just above you can be active even in quiet conditions. If you have ever looked across a road on a warm day, you may remember a wavering in the distance. The surface looks as if it is shimmering, though the road itself is not moving. That wavering is the feeling of looking through uneven air. At night, the same idea returns in a subtler form. The unevenness is gentler, but the distances are far larger. Small shifts become noticeable because the source is so clean and so sharp. A star to your unaided eye arrives as a near-perfect point. It does not present a wide surface. It arrives as something tiny, concentrated, and easy to disturb. When a point is nudged, the whole point appears to move. There is no broader area to average the shift away. A small change in the path becomes a visible change in the star. This is why the shimmer can look like both motion and brightness at once. The light is not only shifting position, it is also shifting how it lands in your eye. A point makes those shifts obvious. The air above you does not create new light. It does not add energy to the star. It changes the aim of what is already arriving. You can think of it as a small repeated misalignment. Each moment the path is adjusted slightly by the air it passes through. Your eye receives the light from a slightly different direction each time. The mind reads that as a tremble. It reads it as a sparkle, a shimmer, a delicate agitation. The effect feels like the star is restless, even if it is not. If you stay with the scene, you can sense that the restlessness has a rhythm that is not the star's rhythm. It is irregular, local, responsive. It belongs to the moving layer overhead, not to a distant furnace. This is the first major reversal of intuition. The motion is not out there, it is here. The unsteady air above your head is shaping what the sky looks like. Now look again without chasing the mechanism. Choose one star that sparkles sharply and one calmer point nearby. Hold them in view together and let the contrast remain simple. Sometimes the shimmer seems to slide along the edge of your vision. A point brightens, then softens, then brightens again. The changes are small, but the mind cannot help noticing them. If you shift your gaze slightly, the sparkle can change. The star is still there, but the path is not the same from one moment to the next. The uneven air just above you keeps rearranging the arrival. You can picture the arrival as a thin line that keeps being nudged. Not pushed far, just redirected by tiny amounts. Those tiny redirects are enough when the source appears as a point. A calm planet feels different because it gives your eyes more than one line to read. Many neighbouring paths arrive together. They do not agree perfectly, and that disagreement becomes steadiness. You might notice that Jupiter can look bold in its steadiness. Saturn can look steady in a softer way, less bright, less sharp. Both can sit in the same region of sky, and both can resist the sharp sparkle nearby. This is not a special case reserved for famous objects. It is a general difference between a point-like arrival and a small disk arrival. One narrow path reveals every nudge many neighbouring paths soften them. Now pause again and watch for a few breaths. A star trembles in place, and nothing about the star itself needs to be imagined as unstable. The motion belongs to the view, and the view belongs to where you stand. Now pause the explanation for a moment and simply watch. Let your gaze settle on one bright star, then on a dimmer one nearby. One may shimmer sharply, the other may shimmer more softly, and both continue without pattern you can predict. Shift your attention a small distance across the sky. A steady point holds its brightness, while a neighbouring point wavers in tiny steps. Nothing in the darkness announces why, and the difference remains gentle and persistent. Once you return to the idea of paths, the next difference begins to fit into place. Some bright points do not shimmer much at all. They hold steady as if they resist the restless layer overhead. Jupiter is the easiest example when it is visible. It can sit among shimmering stars and remain composed. It looks steady even when the air above you is not perfectly still. The steadiness is not because the air stops affecting Jupiter. The air affects everything you see through it. The difference is in how the light arrives at your eye. A star arrives as a near point, so one small shift can move the whole appearance. A bright planet does not arrive as a single point in the same way. It arrives as a tiny disk, a small spread of light, even if it still looks point-like at a casual glance. That small disk matters because it carries many slightly different paths at once. Instead of one narrow stream of light, you receive a bundle. Not one ray, but many neighbouring rays arriving together. Each of those rays passes through slightly different parts of the uneven air just above you. One is nudged a little this way, another a little that way. Their tiny shifts do not perfectly match. When you collect them together, the shifts can cancel out. One path brightens while another dims. One path drifts slightly while another drifts back. The result is not perfect stillness, but it is calmer. The tiny disk averages the unsteadiness. It turns many small misalignments into something closer to stable. This is the core reason planets often look steady. It is not that the sky treats them differently. It is that their light arrives with breadth, not as a single sharp point. A point is fragile in this sense. It only needs a small nudge to appear to dance. A disk is more resilient because it is already spread out. You can hold this contrast in a simple form: one path versus many paths. One concentrated point versus a tiny surface. Imagine holding your gaze on the same star for a full minute. The shimmer does not repeat itself in a clean loop. It wanders, softens, sharpens, and keeps changing its emphasis. If you move your focus slightly forward and back, the impression can change again. The star remains the same point, but your eye receives it differently. The experience stays sensitive because the arrival is so concentrated. A small disk arrival gives your eyes a steadier thing to hold. It is still distant, still small, still surrounded by dark. But it feels less fragile against the tiny shifts along the path. You can treat this as a practical way of reading the sky. A sharp sparkle often belongs to a point-like arrival. A steadier glow often belongs to a wider arrival, even when it still looks like a point at first glance. Keep the idea gentle and keep it near where you stand. The air overhead keeps shifting, and the sky keeps arriving through it. The difference is not in drama, it is in how the light samples the shifting path. This also explains why the restlessness of a star can feel more dramatic than you expect. The effect is being applied to something that has no width. There is nothing to smooth it. By contrast, when the same restless layer overhead affects a planet, the planet does not collapse into a single twitch. Its light is shared across that tiny disk. The disturbances blend together into a steadier impression. There is a second bright point that often shows this calmness in a softer way. Saturn is not always as striking as Jupiter, but it can look composed with a steadiness that feels muted rather than sharp. When you find both in the same night, Jupiter can seem bold and settled, and Saturn can seem quieter, steady with less glare. Neither is being spared by the air above you. Both are being seen through the same layered atmosphere. The difference is that their light arrives as a small surface, not as a single pinpoint. This way of thinking does not require you to identify every object. It is a way to read the behavior you already see. Restlessness suggests a point-like source. Calmness suggests a source with a tiny disk. The unsteady air above your head becomes a filter that reveals this difference. It exaggerates the point-like nature of stars. It softens the broader nature of planets. If you want a physical picture, imagine looking at a distant candle through gentle ripples in glass. A single flame can appear to jump and shimmer. A wider patch of light looks steadier because the ripples affect different parts differently. The night sky offers a similar contrast. A star is like that concentrated flame easily shifted by tiny changes along the line of sight. A planet is like a small glowing bead with a surface offering multiple neighbouring paths at once. This does not mean planets never appear to shimmer. They can, especially when the view passes through a thicker stretch of air, but their shimmer is often softened by their small disk, and it rarely has the sharp sparkle of a star. It also does not mean stars always shimmer strongly. Some nights the air overhead is gentler. Some directions in the sky are reached through calmer layers. Still, the difference between point and disk remains a reliable guide. It explains why a bright planet can look composed while nearby stars sparkle. It turns a casual observation into a readable pattern. Notice how this keeps the action close to where you stand. The star remains steady, the planet remains itself. The shifting is in the air above you, and the difference is in how the light samples that air. A single point samples one narrow path at a time. A small disk samples many neighbouring paths at once. The unsteady air above your head cannot push them all the same way, so the average feels calmer. This is one of the rare cases where the sky teaches by contrast. Two objects can sit near each other in the same darkness. One sparkles, one holds steady, and the difference points to the shape of the arriving light. If you keep watching Jupiter, you may notice it is not perfectly frozen. There can be a soft wavering at times, but it tends to resist the sharp, needle-like shimmer that stars show. That resistance is not a special power. It is spread and averaging. It is the quiet consequence of many paths arriving together. Now, the earlier micro-mystery from the opening begins to dissolve without losing its quietness. A distant star looks unsteady not because it is unstable. It looks unsteady because you are viewing a point through uneven air. And a planet looks calmer not because the air spares it. It looks calmer because its light arrives with width. Many paths share the disturbance, and the disturbance fades into an average. The story stays simple when you keep it near the observer. There is a steady source far away. There is an unsteady layer overhead. Between them is a path that changes moment to moment. The changes are small, but your eye is sensitive to them. A point reveals every shift, a disk smooths them. This is enough mechanism for now, and it is already more than it seems. It turns shimmering into something shaped by the view rather than by the source. It turns the night sky into a scene shaped by where you stand. Look up again without trying to explain anything further. A bright star trembles in tiny steps, and a steady point nearby holds its light. The contrast becomes simple, almost physical, as if you can feel the difference in the air above you. In this moment, the sky does not feel like a distant diagram. It feels like light, arriving through a living layer overhead. The unsteady air above your head is not a distraction from the stars, it is part of what makes their light look alive. Once you recognize how the air overhead can shape a point of light, the rest of the night becomes easier to read. The shimmer begins to feel less like a distant instability and more like a changing path. From there, the sky can be watched as it changes with height and with night. You can keep watching without forcing a conclusion. The sky will offer the next clues in how the shimmer changes with height and with night. You do not need to hold the idea tightly. You can let it sit in the background while you keep watching. The sky will keep offering examples low and high, calm and shimmering. From there, the rest of the night becomes easier to read. Twinkling can change with altitude, with warmth, with the shape of the air overhead. The next step is to stay with those changes without turning them into a task. When you hold this idea lightly, the sky begins to offer a new kind of patience. You can watch without needing to name everything. The behavior becomes the label, and the label remains quiet. A calm point can stay calm for an hour, and the stars around it can keep sparkling. Then later the sparkle can soften, and the same region can feel steadier. The air overhead does not hold one condition. This makes the rest of the journey feel less like a single explanation and more like a lived scene. The shimmer becomes something that changes with the night. It can grow stronger near the horizon, it can soften overhead, it can shift as the air settles. From here you can simply keep watching the same sky. The next sections stay close to your viewpoint. They treat twinkling as something you notice from the ground, as part of standing under air. Take one last look at the steady reference point, then return your eyes to the sparkling stars around it. You do not need to decide what everything is. You only need to notice what changes and what holds steady. From here, the story becomes a story of night's angles and air. The sky will keep repeating the patterns. You will keep standing underneath them. You can carry that steadiness with you as you look toward other parts of the sky. The reference point stays in mind even when it leaves your direct view. The night becomes easier to read in this slow way. From here, the story continues without adding complexity. It moves from the nature of the effect to the way the effect changes across the sky. It stays anchored in the air above you. At this point, you have a way to hold the scene in your mind. There is a steady source far away. There is a moving layer overhead, and there is a difference between a point of light and a small disk of light. With that in place, you can keep watching without effort. The rest of the story stays close to what you can see. It follows the shimmer as it changes across the sky, and it returns again and again to the view from the ground. You can treat this as a way of staying with the night sky without rushing it. A single bright point can be watched for a while, then released. Another point can be chosen and the comparison can happen naturally. Nothing needs to be forced. The sky will keep offering calm lights and restless lights. The air overhead will keep changing and the changes will show themselves in small ways. From here, the next section simply follows those small ways. It stays with the same anchor, the unsteady air above your head. It keeps returning to what it feels like to stand under the sky. The shimmer is not fixed in strength. It changes from night to night and sometimes from hour to hour. The sky can look calm one evening, then noticeably more lively the next. Part of this change comes from where the light travels through the air above you. When a star is high overhead, the path is shorter and cleaner. When a star is low, the path is longer, and it crosses more of the uneven layers. You can feel that difference without measuring anything. Near the horizon, the sky often looks more active. The same star that seems steady at one moment can look more unsettled as it sinks. The effect is not only about height, it is also about the character of the air overhead. Some nights the layers blend smoothly, and some nights they seem more mixed. Warm days can leave lingering structure in the evening air. Cool nights can settle into gentler layers. The air above you carries the memory of what the ground has been doing. Cities can add their own texture to the air. Rooftops release heat streaks cool unevenly, and gentle currents form. Even in open country, the ground gives warmth back to the night in slow waves. None of this needs to be dramatic to matter. Tiny differences spread over large distances are enough. The unsteady air above your head can be quiet and still remain uneven. On some nights, the horizon looks almost busy. Low stars can sparkle as if they are made of tiny shifting grains. The effect can feel stronger there even when the air around you feels quiet. On other nights, the horizon looks calmer than expected. The same low stars can appear softer as if the shimmer has been smoothed. A thin veil in the air can change the character of the sparkle. If you stand near a warm wall, you may notice the nearby sky looks a little more alive. A star above the roofline can tremble more than a star above open ground. The air above you carries small local differences, and the light makes them visible. If you step into a darker patch of night, the scene can change again. The shimmer does not vanish, it just feels less sharp. The sky keeps the same points, but the arrival feels slightly different. This is why twinkling can feel personal. It is shaped by the air where you stand, not only by the star you're watching. The same star can look different to someone a few kilometers away. If you want to test this without turning it into a task, you can simply notice patterns. A star near the horizon often sparkles more sharply. A star near the top of the sky often looks calmer. The sky makes this easy because it repeats itself. Night after night, the same rules of arrival apply. You're watching light pass through air, and air is never perfectly still. Near the middle of the sky, you can sometimes find a star that looks almost steady. It still shimmers, but the motion feels smaller, easier to overlook. A few degrees away, another star can sparkle more sharply, as if it is catching every tiny change. These differences do not need to be solved. They are simply part of looking through real air. The night keeps offering them as patiently as it offers the stars themselves. Now pause again and watch without adding any new idea. Let your eyes rest on a low star, then lift to one higher up. The lower one may tremble more, and the higher one may hold its brightness with less wavering. A few minutes of still watching can show changes even within a single patch of sky. A star may shimmer strongly, then soften, then brighten again. The air above you is shifting slowly, and the arrival shifts with it. This is why the shimmer does not feel like a regular pulse. It does not follow a steady beat. It follows the quiet rearrangement of layers overhead. You might notice the shimmer becomes stronger when you look across rooftops. You might notice it softens when you look over a darker field. The air above your head is shaped by what lies beneath it. None of this requires you to know the weather report. It is visible in the light itself. The night sky becomes a subtle indicator of a moving environment. Now return to simple watching. Let your eyes rest on one bright point, then drift to another. Notice how the sky can be calm and restless at the same time. Some nights the shimmer can feel almost delicate. A bright star seems to breathe in brightness, then settle, then brighten again. The changes are small enough that you could miss them if you were in a hurry. If you look away and look back, the pattern continues. The star does not hold a single style of sparkle. It keeps responding to whatever the air overhead is doing in that moment. A calm planet can make this contrast feel clearer. Its light stays more even, and it gives you a stable reference. The unsteady air above your head is still present, but the averaging keeps the glow steadier. If you watch long enough, you may notice the shimmer sometimes shifts from one star to another. One point becomes lively, then another takes its place. The air is not changing everywhere the same way, and the sky reveals that quietly. The longer you stay, the more the air overhead becomes part of the scene, not as a thing you see directly, but as a presence you sense through changes. The stars become a way of noticing the space above your head. The same idea appears when you watch a star as it rises. Low at first, it may sparkle in a lively way. Higher later, it can seem to settle as if it has found steadier ground in the air. Of course, the star has not changed. The path has. The light is sampling different layers as its direction changes. This is one of the quiet gifts of long watching. A single star can teach you how the air overhead behaves, not as data but as a feeling in the arrival of light. If you look toward the horizon, you're looking through more air. The unevenness has more distance to add up. Small nudges can build into larger apparent motion. If you look straight up, the distance through the air is smaller. There is less room for the nudges to accumulate. The shimmer can still be there, but it often feels less intense. This difference can make the horizon feel alive. It can make low stars look like they are vibrating. It can make the sky feel deeper, because the layers between you and the lights become more obvious. Now another kind of calm light enters the scene. Sometimes you notice a bright point that remains settled even when low. It does not sparkle like the nearby stars, and it holds its brightness with a steady glow. Often that point is not a star. It is a planet reflecting sunlight rather than producing its own. It arrives as a tiny disk, and the unsteady layer overhead averages across it. Venus is a frequent example when it is visible. It can be strikingly bright, and it often looks composed. Even when nearby stars shimmer, Venus can seem steady, almost polished. Mars can also show this calmness, though it is usually less brilliant. When Mars is present, it can look more settled than the stars around it. Its light feels less needle-like, less prone to sharp sparkle. Sometimes Venus appears in a part of the sky where many stars are sparkling. Its light can look steadier, almost creamy, as if it refuses the sharp shimmer. It can feel like a small lamp held behind thin glass. Mars can feel different in a quieter way. Its colour helps it stand apart, and its steadiness can feel slightly broader than a star. It does not erase the movement in the air, it softens what that movement can do. When you find a planet near a star, the comparison can be immediate. One point seems to tremble in tiny steps, the other holds a more even glow. The unsteady air above your head is present for both, and the arrival tells the difference. This is not a guarantee on every night. Low in the sky, even a planet can look more active. A longer path through uneven air can still add some wavering. But the quality of the wavering tends to differ. Stars often show a sharper, more pinprick sparkle. Planets often show a softer variation, less like a twitch, more like a gentle shimmer. The difference can be subtle at first. It becomes clearer when you have a steady reference point like Jupiter or Venus. A planet can help you see what the air is doing by showing what averaging looks like. Jupiter often appears calm even in a field of sparkling stars. Saturn can appear calm as well, with a steadiness that feels quieter and less bold. Venus can look like a bright bead of light that refuses to flicker in the same way. Mars can add a different kind of clue. Its colour can make it easier to pick out among the stars. Once you spot it, you may notice its light feels less restless than the points nearby. You do not need to name these objects for the effect to work. You can simply notice which points behave like points and which behave like tiny disks. Behaviour becomes a kind of label written in light. This is one reason the night sky feels richer after you learn to watch slowly. Each point carries more than brightness. It carries information about the path it took to reach you. A twinkling point suggests a near-perfect point source to your eye. A calmer point suggests a small spread of light arriving together. A stronger shimmer near the horizon suggests a longer path through uneven air. None of these are rigid rules, and they do not need to be. They are patterns that appear often enough to notice. They give the night sky a quiet depth. Now return to watching without explanation again. Find a low bright point and a higher bright point. Let your eyes rest on them in silence as their behaviour reveals itself. You may notice that your own steadiness matters too. When you blink or shift your focus, the impression changes. Still watching makes the differences clearer. Even the slightest haze can change what you see. A thin veil in the air can soften sparkle. A crisp, transparent night can make the shimmer feel sharper. This is not because the haze makes the star move. It changes how the light arrives to your eye. It adds another layer of filtering to the unsteady air above your head. The sky is never just the source. It is also the medium. It is the final path in the air where you stand. If you live near water, you might notice different nights feel different. Moist air can carry its own structure. Dry air can feel clearer, and the sparkle can seem more distinct. A winter night can make the shimmer feel different. Cold air can settle into quiet layers, and a bright star may look steadier overhead. Then near the horizon the sparkle can return again, as if the longer path collects every small change. A summer night can feel like the opposite. Warm ground releases heat slowly, and the low sky can look lively for longer. Even overhead a few stars may show a more persistent trembling. If you stand near open water, the air can carry another kind of softness. The stars can look slightly gentler, less sharp at the edges. The unsteady air above your head can still be active, but the arrival can feel smoother. If you live in a valley, you might notice the air settles in layers. Cool air can pool, warmer air can sit above, and gentle mixing continues. The sky then becomes a view through stacked conditions. As the night goes on, the air above you can settle. A star that looked lively earlier can look steadier later. Nothing about the star has changed, the path has simply become calmer. Then close to the horizon, the sparkle can still persist. The longer path keeps collecting small changes. The sky can be calm overhead and busy near the edge at the same time. All of this remains part of the same simple picture. Light passes through uneven air and uneven air shifts. Your eye reads those shifts most strongly when the light arrives as a point. When the light arrives as a small disk, the shifts tend to soften. The arrival becomes steadier not because the air stops moving, but because many paths share the movement. The planet becomes a calmer marker in the same scene. It can be satisfying to realize that the sky is giving you two stories at once. One story is about distant sources. The other story is about the living layer above you. This is where the earlier inversion becomes more than a trick of thought. It becomes a way of feeling your place. You're not only looking outward, you're also looking through a local environment. Now let that idea sit without pressing it further. Look back at the same patch of sky you began with. Some points still shimmer, and some still hold steady. Nothing about this requires you to chase the perfect explanation. It is enough to notice that the shimmer changes with height and with night. It is enough to notice that some bright points resist sharp sparkle. Over time, the sky trains your attention. You begin to recognize a planet by its steadiness before you confirm it by a chart. You begin to sense thicker air near the horizon by the livelier shimmer there. The night becomes a gentle laboratory, but it never needs to feel like work. It remains a place of slow observation. Understanding arrives as a quiet companion to looking. Now move into a different kind of noticing. Consider what twinkling is in the broadest sense. It is not an error in the sky, and it is not a defect in your eyes. It is a sign that you're looking through air. It is evidence of a layer that shifts, mixes, and carries warmth. It is evidence that you stand on a world with an atmosphere. This is why twinkling can be thought of as a local signature. It belongs to the viewpoint from the ground. It belongs to seeing the universe through a living layer overhead. If you imagine the same view from far above the air, the shimmer would fade. The stars would look steadier, and their light would arrive without the last layer of shifting. The restlessness would not be part of the scene. This is not a promise of perfection, it is a change of conditions. Remove the uneven layer above your head, and the trembling changes. The stars are not suddenly different, the arrival is different. Here near the ground, the shimmer is part of the experience. It is a quiet reminder that your planet is not bare rock under vacuum. It is wrapped in air that moves. Now the signature idea can be said plainly, and it lands more gently because it has been earned. In that sense, the shimmer is not a mistake in the universe. It is a small signature of your viewpoint. It belongs to seeing distant light through the moving layer where you live. If you imagine removing that layer, the scene would change in a quiet way. The stars would keep their places and their brightness would feel steadier. The night would look more like a clean diagram and less like a living view. Twinkling is not a property of stars, it's a property of standing on a planet. The motion you see is the sky arriving through the air where you live. After saying it once, there is no need to repeat it as a slogan. The sky will repeat it for you each time a star sparkles and a planet stays composed. The meaning stays present without being pushed. Now watch again with this meaning in the background. A star shimmers, and the shimmer is no longer a distant drama. It is the unsteady air above your head turning steady light into a trembling arrival. A planet holds steady nearby, and that steadiness is no longer mysterious. Many paths are arriving together and the motion is softened into an average. The same air is present and the result differs because the light arrives differently. This can shift the feeling of looking up. You're not only observing distant objects, you're also sensing the condition of the space above you. In a quiet way, twinkling becomes a sign of presence. It marks that you are inside an environment, not outside it. It marks that light reaches you through a medium that moves. Now return once more to simple observation with no new detail. Look across the sky and let the behavior sort itself. Sparkle here, steadiness there, and a horizon that often looks more active than the high dark. A few points might surprise you by staying settled low in the sky. A few stars might look calmer than expected when they are high overhead. The patterns are real, but they are not rigid. This flexibility is part of what makes the night feel alive. It is not a fixed display. It is a view that changes with air and angle and time. If you ever find yourself under very clear conditions, the shimmer can still remain. Even when the sky feels sharp, points can tremble. The unsteady layer overhead does not need to be obvious to be active. If you ever find yourself under hazier conditions, sparkle can soften. The stars can look steadier but dimmer. The air is still there, but it is changing the light in a different way. In all cases, the key idea stays the same. The sky is not only what is out there, it is also what lies between you and what is out there. Before you leave the sky for the night, look across it one more time. Let your eyes move slowly, not searching, just noticing. A bright planet can sit with an even glow, and a bright star can shimmer in tiny steps nearby. Near the horizon, the sparkle can feel more intense, as if the air has more room to work. Higher up, the same kind of sparkle can soften, and the points can look calmer. The night becomes a layered scene, and you are standing inside that layering. A steady point can become a marker you return to. A shimmering point can become a marker you compare against it. The sky does not need labels, the behavior itself becomes the guide. Now return to the moment you began with. You're standing still, and the sky is scattered with points of light. Some shimmer gently and some remain calm. The scene has not changed, but your reading has. A twinkling point can suggest a star seen through uneven layers. A calmer point can suggest a planet, a tiny disk averaging the motion. A low star that sparkles strongly can suggest a longer path through thicker air. A high star that sparkles less can suggest a shorter path overhead. The unsteady air above your head becomes a quiet part of the picture. This does not turn the sky into a puzzle to solve. It turns the sky into something that carries more texture than it first appeared to have. The familiar view becomes richer without becoming complicated. You might notice that this knowledge does not pull you away from the night. It brings you closer to it. It ties the distant lights to the environment you stand within. The shimmer is not a distraction from the stars. It is a reminder that you are seeing them from a place with air. It is a reminder that the viewpoint matters. Even the calm points gain meaning. Their steadiness is not just steadiness. It is the look of light arriving with breadth smoothing the small shifts in the path. Now let the night remain as it is. It does not rush you toward another topic. It does not demand a larger scale. The sky is wide, but tonight can stay simple. A shimmer that belongs to air. A steadiness that belongs to a small disk of light. The night sky does not rush. It holds its patterns patiently. It only needs time to be watched slowly. If you would like to return to this kind of quiet night sky journey again, you can follow the series. One gentle idea at a time, carried by what you can see above you. You can end the night with the same simple act you began with. Stand still and let the points of light behave as they will. Some will shimmer and some will hold steady. The difference does not ask you to do anything about it. It is simply part of looking up from here. A reminder that the sky you see is always shaped by the place where you stand. The air overhead keeps shifting and the view keeps responding quietly. For now, this is enough for one night.